This is Amy Gray-Cunningham, and you are listening to the Butterfly Kisses podcast, a journey of spiritual transformation. It has been my pleasure to speak with some amazing people who have had profound spiritual awakenings. Throughout these conversations, may you experience a life filled with joy, love, and personal growth. Now let's get going. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Butterfly Kisses podcast, the journey of spiritual transformation. I am your host, Amy Gray-Cunningham, and today I have an amazing guest. Her name is Claudia Milligan, and her son passed into the spirit world several years ago, but she's here to talk with us about how her relationship with her son has continued even in the spirit world, and how she continues to talk with him, and how their relationship has continued to grow and blossom, and how the two of them together have grown while he's in the spirit world and with her here in the physical world. It's a rather interesting story, and I really do hope that you stick around to hear it, because our conversation is just about peace and love and joy, and realizing that our loved ones don't die. They continue on, and love never dies. So please join me as we welcome Claudia in just a moment. But I do want to remind you to please subscribe here to Butterfly Kisses, so you will know when a new podcast is being dropped. And then also, if you'd like to, please subscribe to our newsletter. You can do so at butterflykissespodcast.com, or you can go to amygray-cunningham.com and sign up there. And also a few other little tidbit notes to just let you know, this summer I'm going to be doing several in-person fairs. You can go to my website to find out more about those fairs and where they're going to be at amygray-cunningham.com. And also you can sign up for individual mediumship readings or Akashic record readings there as well. So with all that said, please help me welcome Claudia Milligan to Butterfly Kisses. So welcome, Claudia, to Butterfly Kisses today. I am so excited to have you. I know that we have a couple people in spirit who have brought us together today. So first of all, I want to recognize that and say thank you to our loved ones for this wonderful opportunity for us to share our stories. And so anyway, tell us a little bit about you and your story, and how you got to where you're communicating with your loved ones in spirit.
Wow, I have never started this, but I'm going to start with the fact that I was always about being who you wanted me to be. So I never even knew who I was, and I never really loved anybody, because just like I knew you wanted me to be taller and thinner and whatever, I wanted you to be also improved. And then I held my son in my arms for the first time. His name is David. And first time, he's perfect, exactly as he is. And I could tell by the way he was looking at me that he had the same high opinion. So, we had a lot of conflict, a lot. We're both very, very strong personalities. And so there was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of conflict, a lot of, no, you should be doing it this way, but from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And David passed when he was 29 years old. He took his own life. At that time, I didn't buy any of this nonsense that you're into. If I would have heard some lady talking to her husband, I would have turned off the TV or whatever, and, whatever makes you happy, dear, right? There's even a line in my book. I was in accounting. Debits on the left, credits on the right. crystals in the garbage where they belong, and I just didn't buy it. And I honestly don't think I ever took enough time to think about it, to slow down a little bit. So David passed on a Monday. That Friday, I just said out loud, I love you, David. And I heard very clearly in my mind, just a thought, but it was a thought in David's phrasing and voice. Love you too, Mom. And I thought I was losing it, but it kept happening. It kept happening. And I knew he was with me. The day of his memorial, I'm getting ready, and David says, "Save me a seat, Mom." And we always argue. So I said, "I can't save you a seat. There's 8 people at the table, and I know each one of them who they're going to be. Can't save you a seat." And that was the end of it, I thought. Went to the hall. There were 9 people at my table. I had miscounted or something, and a friend figured it out without me saying anything. A friend that was supposed to be sitting at my table. "Don't worry, Claudia, I'll sit right over here. I'll be right over here." Thank you. So everybody sits down, and it turns out that there was an empty seat at the table, and that empty seat remained for the whole memorial. He had saved his own seat.
Gotta love it when they do that, right?
So I don't know your whole story, but I would imagine that it's like mine, at least in one sense. There's a little bit of nonsense, and then there's a little bit of evidence, and then the evidence keeps building until I had written letters to David and from David for a full year. And at the end of a year, I couldn't rationalize the self-doubt or the doubt. And I pushed myself away from my desk and I said, "That is you, isn't it?" It's even a person with a rational mind can't deny it after a certain point.
Yep. They're very creative in the way they try to get our attention because they're still right here. They're still right here with us, and they want to communicate with us because they're still our loved ones. They
Yeah.
just don't have a physical body anymore.
You had said something in one of your podcasts, something about it's like they're in the same room. And David, in one of his letters, reminded me of a favorite poem of mine, even before he passed, something about "Don't be afraid of death. I have only stepped into the next room." And
Yes.
David said, "I'm not even in the next room. I'm sort of on your lap, LOL."
Yes.
And, yeah, the next room doesn't even make sense anymore. Right here, right now.
Yes. It's so funny because sometimes I can even smell him because my husband used to smoke and I can smell the cigarettes, and there's nobody around me that's smoking cigarettes, but I can still smell that smell. And my mother has actually smelled it when we've been in the car. I'm like, "Can you smell that?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I can." I'm like,
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, because usually other people can't.
yeah, but it's a car that nobody else has ever smoked in because it's a brand new car. And I was like, "Can you smell it?" And she's like, "I can." I was like, "Yep," because he's still right here with us. And
With my boy, it's the orchid tree that was in my backyard. No longer my backyard, but David was an arborist, and we both loved that gorgeous orchid tree. So the first time it ever happened, I was sitting on the patio with a friend. And the orchid tree was only in bloom a few weeks in April.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Do you smell that?" "Yeah, it smells like the orchid tree," except that the orchid tree wasn't in bloom. And
Aw.
it's happened a few times with that's his scent.
Mm-hmm. Does David move things around the house on you?
You know, I'm afraid I still don't pay good enough attention. I do remember one time I was worried about something, whether I was going to be able to do something, and there was this huge clatter. And I got up and I looked around, couldn't find anything. And the next day I noticed that my Reiki certificate had fallen on the floor when I was sitting there. "I can't do this. I can't do this. Here, you got a certificate." You know, he's got a great sense of humor. So he makes me laugh a lot.
That is too funny. Here's your sign, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think is your learning experience from this?
I mean, besides the obvious, we don't die, right?
Yes.
I think the biggest thing is there is so much more. No matter where we are, there is so much more.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a door opened and I got to go into another room. It's like a door opened and there were a whole bunch of doors in front of me. And any door I opened, there were a whole bunch of doors in front of me. There's no limits except the ones that I make up.
What do you tell parents who have just lost their child and they're coming to you for help or advice? How do you counsel them? What do you tell them?
Well, first I'll tell you what somebody told me. It was pretty early on. It was at night, and you know how nights, at least for me, are always so much more horrible than days. And it was night. I just didn't think I could do it anymore. And this was with knowing that David was around, but still his physical presence is gone, right?
Yep.
And I noticed a friend of mine was online and I called her and I told her what was going on. And she said these philosophical words that got me through the evening. She said she had also lost a son, and she said, "Sometimes it just blows."
It does. I agree. It really does.
But hearing that from someone who knows that it does
Mhm.
is huge. So when people are really new, that's about as deep as I get.
Mhm. Yep. Hug.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell somebody new to grief, "Oh, it's going to be okay. You'll get stronger. You'll learn about how to handle this." Because if they had any sense, they'd slug me.
Mm. Yeah. It's it's really interesting because in our society we don't talk about how to handle grief. I mean, it's not something we learn in school. It's not, we just don't talk about it. And I mean, I remember my grandparents dying when I was younger. I was there when my grandfather passed. Um, and I've witnessed it, but when my husband passed, that was the first time where I felt my heart being ripped from my chest, literally.
Yeah.
And it's like the world stopped turning, and I got mad because everybody else kept living. But I'm like, how do I keep moving? And I had to learn how to grieve.
Yeah.
and how to do it, but still at the same time know how to find peace at the same time, and know that it's okay. The and but.
Yeah. Yeah, but I wouldn't tell a mom whose son was newly in spirit, it's okay, right?
Yeah. And
Because
it
it's
wasn't okay. It
not
wasn't
at that
okay.
moment.
Yeah. It's not okay. It's not okay. It sucks. It sucks. And you're missing the physical presence. And I think the first time I felt him and I knew that he was still with me, I mean, whoa, it was amazing. But there's still times, and it's been 3 years now for me since he passed into the next world, where I still just miss him. I miss his physical presence. I miss being able to say, okay, what would you do here? What would you do there? But yet I know at the same time I can still ask him, and he still responds
Yep.
in his quirky little way, and he still guides me. And I'm like, well, why didn't you give me guidance here? And I'll hear him say, well, you never asked me.
I can see David hanging out with Chuck because they have the same sense of humor.
Yeah, they do. They do. After reading your book, I'm like, yeah, now I kind of know why. You were brought into
He wasn't much of a socialite,
neither
for
was
lack
Chuck.
of a better term, but he seems to have met almost everybody in spirit. I don't know if that's possible, maybe it is, but so many of the moms will say, I don't know, I just felt drawn. And
Mhm.
I can't explain it. And like in one of the letters, actually, David told me, yeah, I'm talking to some kids, so be ready. And that day I had four new appointments, which is unusual for me. I'm not that busy a girl by design and by the reality of it.
Yeah, Chuck had a t-shirt that said it's way too peoply outside for me. So yeah, and yeah, he did not like to be around crowds or a bunch of people. And I remember his 1 year anniversary, I decided to go to a really popular medium to have, it was like a group session, a group dem, and there was probably maybe 75 people there. And I was like, honey, I really would love to hear from you. And all I heard was, it's way too peoply outside for me. And I'm like, but you're in spirit. And but I heard that he would let me know that he was there. He would let me know that he was there. And I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting there, and I find I'm not all the way at the front, but I'm not in the back. I'm kind of in the middle, but I'm off to the side a little bit. And this lady comes in and sits down beside me. And there's like seats. There's a seat beside me, two seats over to the right of me, and two seats over to the left of me. And she comes and sits down right beside me. She's wearing a butterfly dress.
Oh, wow.
Butterfly kisses. I have butterflies everywhere, and I'm like, okay, he's here with me. And then I'm looking at the stage, and everything was all gray. Like the stage was gray, the wall was gray. And it was like, that is so depressing for a room full of grieving people to have nothing but gray. I was like, they should have at least put like a flowers or something up there. And I heard Chuck in my head say, oh, don't worry about it. He's going to come out in a royal blue shirt and he's going to look really nice. I'm like, okay. And it'll make it pop. Something my husband would probably never ever say in life, but I just thought it was so funny. Well, this medium came out on stage and he was on a royal blue shirt that just made everything pop. And he
Of
looked,
course he was,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm like, okay, honey. And of course, Chuck didn't come through, but because it was way too peoply out there for him, but I knew he was there. So
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So lots of fun stuff. So what else? Tell me a little bit about your book.
Okay, I'd
read
love
your
to.
book. I read your book.
Um,
Amazing. But I'd love for you to tell our audience more about the book. Where can they find it? Why did you write it?
First, I'll tell you that who titled the book.
Yes.
And that would be David. And he started out with, he wanted it talking to David. I edited it. It's called Letters to David. But the second part, I had come up with something I thought was like 3 choices I thought was pretty good. Hey, David, take a look at this. No. And he gave me a list of 3 choices. And one of them was the one I chose. So the title of the book is Letters to David, Following My Son into Spirit. Because I just had no use for whatever you want to call that. It just wasn't logical. And so he entitled the book, and the cover of the book has my name and David's name as the author. And at one point I said, David, do you mind that my name is bigger than yours? And he said, Ma, my name's in the title.
That's hysterical.
So I started writing just a couple months after David passed. And I just looked at some of the letters at the very beginning and some of the letters now. And David's so much different, and I'm so much different. You know, early on it was, there's a bird, he's coming near me. Is that you?
How do you mean that David's different now?
One of the things he told me in one of his letters a little later was, we're not all Shaktis on day 1, Mom.
That's awesome.
But I noticed that he changed. One of the things that most irritated me about David here was he would often tell me how to run my life. You can't put stones under a pine tree. You don't even own a blower. And he would tell me that 100 times because pine trees, you know? And so one of the first things I noticed was he just quit giving me advice, making me sound like I was stupid, you know? He'd just say, well, do you think it might work if, or what, you know, but he got less irritating. Sorry, David. He started being more calm about things. He started being more patient with me. But he spiritually evolved, not like this, but like this.
That's so cool. And it's interesting that you recognize that. So
Well, yeah. But
do you think we
remember,
continue to learn?
pardon?
Do you think we continue to learn on the other side as we
You know, I can only say from my experience in getting to know David so well, day after day after day, that we do. I just was reading, I think it was Heaven and Hell, Emanuel Swedenborg, and he says, you know, we don't grow like that when we're in spirit because we don't have all of these opportunities, like, you know, the Zoom has to update or whatever. We don't have all these opportunities to learn patience and tolerance and love and forgiveness that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen David change and grow. and he's taught me what he has been learning, and he says I've taught him when I've started to learn. Of course, he had a little bit of an advantage. If all of a sudden I was reading about trance, he would check out, somebody in spirit. He might check out Leslie Flint or somebody, somebody that he could sit down and talk to.
That's pretty. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. So how did you start writing to him? What made you think to do that?
I had what I call an inadequate near-death experience. In I think it was 97. Yeah, David would have been 9 years old. I had sepsis, all my organs shut down. And then there was this nice lady standing at the foot of my bed, and she said, "Would you like to go?" And I knew what she meant.
Mhm.
And I said, "Yes, I would, but could you find somebody to watch David?" And all of a sudden, I was back, and the doctor was saying, "We thought we lost you." And I was like, "No lights?" I didn't say that then, but later, no lights, no miracles, no nothing. But after that happened, I started doing, I just call it intuitive writing because I've never heard that term before, so nobody can argue with me about what it is and how you do it right.
Love it. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I started going to a meadow, an imaginative place. I started writing about what happened in that meadow. And it was odd because it wasn't like I was sitting at my journal or my computer making stuff up. It was like things were happening and I was the scribe.
That's so cool.
I have written a ton of letters to God and then, my higher power as my beliefs changed, and written back.
That's so cool.
So when David passed and I went to this Reiki medium, I thought that was so bizarre. But she said, but you can write to spirit and write back. Why wouldn't you be able to do that with David?
Interesting question.
One I didn't have a good answer for, so I started writing to and from David.
And he's been writing you back.
And if I call it channeling, there's going to be people arguing with me about what that is, or I'll argue with them. Let's be honest. Or if I call it trance work, everybody has an opinion about what it is. I'm not interested in what it is. I'm just interested in what it does for me.
What are the things that you can prove, or how do you know that it's David talking back to you? What are some of the things that you know it's David? No explanation.
One thing I think is obvious for me, and I'll tell you, I'm not interested in proving it to anybody else. I read a book about a person who wrote to and from her loved one. I read it because somebody I had shared a David letter said, "This reminds me so much of that book." And I read the book and there was a lot of proof. And as I kept reading the book, I kept calling BS.
Mm.
There was a lot of proof, this would happen and he would say this. And so in David's books, there's not a lot of this. He tells me what's going to happen tomorrow, but it was simple things. I was married at the time, and and he would write to me and he would say, you've just got to be a better wife. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And so David was arguing with what I thought. And I thought, this is very weird. This shouldn't be able to happen. Why would my own head argue with my own head? I can usually count on myself to agree with me, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was things like that, but it was just a little tiny pieces over and over and over and over and over again.
I love that. Yeah.
And you know Chuck's voice, you know his words, you know how he would say something. And some of the moms will argue because I suggest this for them as well. And some of them will argue, well, I know so well how he talks and what he would say. But so many of the times what I'm writing is just not something that's in my mind. It's not conscious. I wasn't thinking about that. And it surprises me. It makes me laugh. It makes me cry. I don't know about you, but generally when I think something, it doesn't bring on huge emotional responses.
Yeah.
Because, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I can hear Chuck's voice in my head, and it's very much his voice. And it would be something that he would say, I guess, I'm cooking dinner for myself, and I'm, going back and forth with, how was your day? And it's just like, we're having this conversation back and forth, and I'm telling him about my day, and he's telling me about his day. And, he's out at the golf course, or he's helping friends, or he's doing this, but it's like we're having a conversation. And it's very comforting.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people will be like, well, you're just making it all up. But there's a knowing that comes with it, a clear cognizance, I guess, that it's more than just all in my head.
Yes.
Are you searching for a deeper connection with the unseen world? Well, then look no further. I am Amy Gray-Cunningham, and I invite you to explore the realms beyond the ordinary. As a gifted medium, I've spent years honing my abilities to bridge the gap between our world and the spirit realm. My unique approach to mediumship combines intuition, empathy, and a profound understanding of the unseen energies around us. Through a mediumship session, I can help you connect with your loved ones who have passed on, providing comfort, healing, and profound insights. Whether you're seeking closure, guidance, or simply a sense of peace, my mediumship sessions provide a secure and nurturing space for you to delve into the mysteries of the afterlife. Join me today on a transformative journey as I channel messages from the other side, offering validation, clarity, and a profound sense of connection to those who have crossed over. Book your mediumship session with me today. A typical session lasts about 50 minutes, giving us ample time to connect and for you to experience the power of a spiritual connection. So visit my website at amygraycunningham.com to schedule your session. Now get ready to unlock the healing that awaits you.
And one of the things I wrote early on, I still don't know. I'm not sure this is you, but I know that it brings me comfort. So I'm going to keep doing it. And when I think for a full year, I wrote almost every day. I mean, we're talking 355 days a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing, but knowing it makes me feel better. And we really do. I believe we really do what works for us, or at least what we think works for us. And this worked for me. And the
Yeah.
same thing happened with meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I came to know more and more strongly that this worked for me, that this gave me peace, that this made me more able to do life. So why wouldn't I want to do it more than 10 minutes a day, you know?
And that, yeah, exactly. Exactly. One of the things that I do with Chuck too is I ask him, I'm like, okay, well, give me some signs that you're around. And I love the sign game with them. I love playing the sign game. And there was one where I'd taken the dogs to go get groomed one time. And as I'm writing the check, the lady looked at me, and it was just really bizarre because I'd been taking the dogs to her for a while to get groomed, but she just looked at me just really strangely, and she's like, you're beautiful. And it was just kind of a little odd at the time. And I'm like, thank you, you know, and I gave her the check, and I thought to myself, it was just very out of character for her to say something like that to me. So I was like, honey, was that you giving me a compliment through her? I was like, if so, I need a sign. So I get in the car, and I normally don't have the radio on when I'm in the car. If I have anything on, I have like podcasts or something, but I don't hardly ever have the radio on unless I have my niece or nephews or whatever in the car. But I didn't have the radio on that morning. I get in the car, turn the car on, the radio is on, and the song that's playing is You Are Beautiful to Me.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, you can't make it. And I was just like, tears streaming down my face as I'm driving home. I was like, thank you, honey.
I love sayings and acronyms, and one of the ones I like is if it's odd, it's God. But I mean, we got to figure. I don't want to go with figuring out something with it's Chuck. We won't go there, okay?
Well, it's just, I'm like, sometimes there's just no other explanation, and you just have to go with it. But it was just, and she probably didn't realize she was being used for something so amazing.
Yeah, and I've never believed that spirit's going to make anybody do or say or be anybody that's not already in them, you know?
So, but it was really a cool thing to have happen. Um, but the key is the radio was not on when I got out of the car. And when I turned the car on, the radio was on, and it was on a song called You're Beautiful to Me. And it was just, and it's a
Perfect.
song that he used to sing to me when several times, it would come on and we would dance or whatever. So it was an important song. But yeah. Does David send you signs or anything that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been 7 years, a little over 7 years. So, and I do not practice what I preach. I tell the moms so often, keep records of the signs, so that when you're starting to doubt, you can read all these lists of all these things that have had. Oh, I forgot that one. But he's pennies and nickel, or pennies and dimes. My dad is nickels. And one time I said, do you think you could send like big bills? And we were at some hotel in California, walking out to the car, and I see something under the tire of the car, and I look down, and it's a rolled up $100 bill.
Wow. I
It
need to
looked like it had been rolled up for illegal purposes. So just so many different things. One of the most precious times was when I heard his voice. I mean, I hear, but I don't generally hear his voice. Like the first time it was his voice, but it was in my head. But usually it's subjective. So I
Yes.
don't hear it with my ears. must have been at 2 or 3 years. I was driving down the street in my car. My phone rang, it was on Bluetooth, and you know, there's that second or so between the time you pick up the phone and the connection is made, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a second or so, and I hear David's voice say, "Hi, Mom." And then some lady comes, his voice, my ears, you know.
Yes.
And the good news, and one of the things I'll talk to the moms about a lot is talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, find your people, tell them the truth. And so I pulled over, I picked up the phone, I called 2 people, and one of them just said, "Well, yeah, why is that surprising?"
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, their energy, why would they not like electronics? My phone didn't work for 6 months. It was downloading apps when I wasn't anywhere near it. It just stuff.
Yeah.
And the other friend, you know, was cool. And then I went home and I wrote on a mom's Facebook account, you know, what had happened. 5 minutes, somebody wrote, "Oh, thank God you wrote that. That happened to me 2 days ago. I thought I was lost."
Now you say that you work with moms. How do you work with moms?
I volunteer for a mom's group that does a lot of mediumship. So at least once a month, sometimes more, we'll do a group of moms and a group of mediums. Sometimes there's as many as 10 or more mediums and a group of maybe 300 moms.
Oh, wow.
So as a result, we also do, like when I do a dem, I'll do mediumship for an hour and a half or whatever, with usually with a buddy, and then we'll do Q&A. And the Q&A is almost my favorite part, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because some of them just want to be told that the lies they're hearing are lies. And I wouldn't say, well, they're lies, but I would say, you know, what I say so often, when you get a sign or you see something or hear something or feel something and you feel joy and you feel like that's him, that's her, don't go next door to your evangelical neighbor and ask them if that's really a sign. You know, we're the experts. We know.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like Chuck shows up way differently for you than David shows up for me, because we're 2 different people with 2 different relationships with 2 other people. Why wouldn't it be different, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, if they all showed up the same, then that would just be boring.
And I can't imagine I boring David. I just can't.
Exactly. Chuck, I can't imagine Chuck being boring, but yes. So what kind of mediumship work do you do?
Well, early on when I started practicing, I would be in the middle of a reading and the communicator would say, "Just let me talk." And I'd say, "Oh no, we can't do that. That's not how this works." And I would ask my teachers, and I've had a lot of teachers. I heard somebody somewhere said, a child should always have a lot of teachers so they learn to think for themselves. Isn't that great?
That's awesome. I love that. Yep.
So I started learning from different teachers that maybe spirit knows more about mediumship than mediumship teachers do.
Imagine that.
I started studying trance. I've been studying trance, I don't know, maybe 4 years now.
Oh, I love
Yeah, so what I'll do often with the moms is, and most of them know me by now, but I'll ask if it's okay, I'll step back. And it's almost like I'm standing behind the chair, I say to the moms, and let your kid come in and talk to you.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will say if it's really trance, the trance, the person in trance won't remember a bit of it. Well, I generally do. So I'm sitting there going, I'm making all this up. But so often, just like in regular mediumship, so often, we'll get something. Did I just make that up? And then the sitter will say, oh my gosh, yes, that was the time and you're like, okay, I guess I didn't.
Yep.
And the same thing happens when I bring the kids in. When they first come in, I generally get a physical sensation
Yeah.
of some sort. He was tall and thin. That's kind of boring. Sorry, whoever that was. But once it was, he had a lot of hair on his chest. And I didn't think that was really important, but the mom starts laughing and crying at the same time. And I say, you got to tell me the story. And she tells the family story behind the hair in this guy's chest. But what, I mean, I'm going to imagine that a lot of times Chuck has spoken to you, especially in the beginning, and you've thought, I'm doing it again, I'm making it up. At least that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed that validation. And early on, I needed to see another medium to have her tell me that the things that were happening were happening.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I wasn't going to the evangelical neighbor, right?
Yeah, that's never a good idea. I would never, because they're just going to look at us. And it's interesting because a lot of Chuck's family on his mother's side are very much evangelical Christians, and they do not believe in what I do or that I can speak and hear from Chuck. So really, they just don't like it. And, I feel bad for them because I love still having this relationship with him and still being able to carry and have him in my life. It's so wonderful to be able to carry on this relationship and know that it continues.
Yeah.
And that we're never really separated from our loved ones. It's so wonderful. And the work as a medium and being able to provide healing for those who are missing their loved ones, or who the spirit world, those in spirit, feel like they weren't able to say something before they passed, and be able to help them heal as well. I mean, there's just so much joy in doing that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So much joy that I love doing it. And I get so much, sometimes I feel like I get more out of it than the sitter does. And
But I hear you when they start and you just see that blank, who really dies, but
yeah,
there's just that pain, that awfulness, and that as time goes on, they keep saying, all right, maybe, all right, maybe,
yeah,
or oh,
mhm, yeah.
and
I
it's magic.
It is, it's wonderful. And I did a reading for a lady last week, and she sent me a text message the day after, and she said she was re-listening to the reading and she just wanted to say thank you, because there was so much healing that came from that reading that she was able to move beyond. And it just, that just meant so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love and I ask them, in my email, I'll send them the recording. I'll send them if there were songs. I mostly, I think, just because I love to get songs, I get a lot of songs. So
Oh,
I'll give them the songs and the clips to the songs. And I'll also ask them, if there's something that you recognize later when you listen to the recording. I love to hear those stories. And some of the stories are just phenomenal. I mean, I think they're there to bring hope and help, not only to the sitter, but to us. Yeah, we're not making this up, because I don't know about you. It does go through my mind sometimes.
oh yeah, definitely. It's like, is this really, I mean, there was one time it was coming, what was it? It was like I kept hearing like drumming. It's like a drumming sound. I'm like, what is this drumming sound? So I finally just said, there's some sort of drumming going on. And I couldn't, and so I just said it. And the person that was in spirit was a drumette in the band.
I've never even heard of a drumette, right?
Yeah, and that's why, and I never would have, but I kept hearing drumming, and they were a drumette in the band. And that never would have come through my filter, but I just kept hearing like a drumming sound.
Yeah.
It was a drumette in the, but and just different things that come through sometimes. It's just, and I've always learned you give what you get. And so I tell everybody, that I give readings to, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm getting, whether it's completely obtuse to me or not, and usually it's those things that mean the most to them.
Yeah, for me, it's the part of the joy is like putting the pieces together, almost like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like sometimes they'll give me my memories. Why
Yeah.
are you giving me my memories? And so that translation,
Because they have to go.
that you want to communicate with that. Oh,
Well, they have to work through our filter, and
right.
it's really interesting because I've heard that the spirit world orchestrates all of the sittings and all of the people that come to us, and they get so excited when there's new mediums available, because they're like, oh, we can use her, and they've got different ways of communicating, because we are their mouthpiece, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
And if we, who is it, Mavis Patilla always says that she doesn't want to get to heaven, which she is now in heaven, and look at a spirit and have that spirit say, I never said that. Why did you tell me one?
Yeah, one of the things she taught me was that after you do a reading, talk to the spirit. Hey, how did I do? How could I have done better? And most of the time I forget, but so often when I do, it's just amazing. I read for a friend of mine, and I wrote to that person afterwards, and he talked about pauses. He talked about how if I could leave a little bit of a pause in between each piece, that it would be much more powerful. I don't remember what else he said, but I shared his letter, because I would write him with my friend, who that was just right. That was him. That was right bang on him. And secondarily, he was a speech teacher.
Interesting.
So even the letter, he gave evidence for his.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's so because we can learn so much from the spirit world as well. And helps to broaden our skill set, and learning from them to expand our knowledge, I think.
right?
And I just love doing this work. And who knew that I think I'm going to title this Two Mediums Talking About Mediumship.
It wasn't on my list of things to do, not at all.
Not at all. But it just, I think, the spirit world is in charge, and they just lead. And Chuck, like I said, leads the direction of the interviews for the most part. But what is the one thing that you want people to take away from your story, from your life, and from David's?
I will tell you that I saw some kind of TED talk on grief, and the woman was telling how all these losses, they were the worst thing that ever happened to her. And her friend said, well, what if it was the best thing?
Mm.
And I'm sitting there and my jaws dropped open, but I decided to try it on. I just put it on like a jacket. What if it was the best thing? And the truth is, David wasn't suited for this world. And I know he's so much happier where he is. But I also know I'm not the person that I was before he passed. And I'll tell my friends that if that Claudia knocked on my door, I wouldn't let her in. I found a new life. I found a new way to bring hope to people. I've become a person that I love. I'm my best friend. We have so much in common, you know. And I'm closer to David than I ever was. We were close.
Yeah.
So many of the moms with kids in spirit are like this. So what I would want people to take away from the book, that love never dies. It only grows. And all you have to do is water it a little and maybe weed it every once in a while. And it's always better and stronger and more powerful than it was a week or a year ago. And even if it doesn't make sense to my head, I go to my heart more often than my head today. It knows more.
That it does. Our heart has all the answers. Beautifully said. What do you think David would tell everybody about life?
Before or after he told them to learn how to ride comets?
Either or.
He would probably, he would say there's nothing that can get us down unless we let it get us down. He would say that joy is available for the taking. He would say that if it's not ridiculous, go out and find something that is ridiculous, because that's so much more fun. He would say, keep on trucking, because if you don't have an answer now, you'll have an answer soon.
I love that. Thank you, David. Claudia, you have been an amazing guest today, and I am so grateful that you have joined us on Butterfly Kisses. You have made my day, and this has just been so wonderful. Tell people where they can, yes, Sending hugs and loves. Tell people where they can find your book, where they can find you. And I will also have all of that in the show notes as well. But
Right.
please.
You can find my book on Amazon, Claudia Milligan,
Okay.
Letters from David, Letters to David. We'll get to that. I have a friend who argues the title should have been Letters from David, but it's not. My website, and there's more information on the book also on the website.
Okay, good.
It's www.hello-from-home.com. I named it that because, some people will say hello from heaven.
Yeah.
They're right here. They're right here. They're
Yep.
right here. Hello from home.
I love that. Hello from home. Yep. Because they are home, but they're right here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, everyone, thank Claudia for joining us today, and we will see you all in 2 weeks on another episode of Butterfly Kisses. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Amy. Great time with you and with Chuck.
Thank you. Chuck says thank you too. And thank you, David.
Thank you for tuning in to Butterfly Kisses podcast, a journey of spiritual transformation. We hope today's episode has sparked new thoughts, offered fresh perspectives, or simply entertained you. Remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Connect with us on social media, share your thoughts, and stay engaged. Also, share it with a friend. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the journey of spiritual transformation. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See ya!